Psychology of collapse. I got a couple mallards. Beautiful, huh? Beauties. Couple drakes off my farm pond. Jump shot them. So I had them hanging for a couple days, and now I'm going to pluck them. So, and normally what I would do is actually I would skin this, and especially these side ones. These feathers right here are really good if you tie flies. And so if you'd like to tie flies, that's the way to go. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang out for a little bit. I'll pluck some feathers and get going on this until we got people coming in, and I'll just start talking about the psychology of collapse. Because if you've been paying attention to what's been happening, it's been pretty wild. Ooh, that's gonna be some good duck. How do you like duck? Cherry duck? Grilled duck? Roast duck? Oh, and don't forget, see that tail right there? That's a tail that a lot of us will tie off on a safety pin and put in our hat. That's how you recognize waterfowl hunters. Duck hunters. Boy, there's some really nice down on here. We raise geese on our property. And once you hear that grunting over there, that's my pigs. Maybe we'll have them in another episode where we'll talk to the pigs. Just before we take care of two of them when I get back from flight training. But it's going pretty fast. See, it's coming off real quick. Oh, they're getting hungry. They can tell. It's about feeding time. What do you feed your pigs? Corn? Pig feed? So, if you don't want to watch me pluck a duck, I'll give you an idea of when I'm going to start doing the talk. 'Cause what we're learning about YouTube is that you got to wait a while for people to come on live. And I'm doing this live. This is a live episode. This is my first live episode as under Cork's Critical Thinking Corner with Cork Graham. And this will be on Apple Podcasts, but that time I will edit the interlude. But if you don't know how to pluck ducks, this is how you pluck ducks. You just pluck ducks like that by grabbing it. And then what I'll do is I'll rub off the down, and then I'll singe it with a torch and wash it off, and then I will put it in if I'm going to eat it shortly, which I won't, I would put it in a Ziploc and then throw it in the freezer. But what I'm going to do is vacuum seal them so that I can enjoy them when I get back. So what I'll do is I'll come down to the wing joint right about here, and that's as far as I'll pluck. So I'm kind of leaving that mallard drake tail like that, and then I'll tie it almost like you're tying a trout fly. But you tie it onto a safety pin, like I say, like a baby pin, right there. See the curly cur right there. Got big pigs and little pigs. You study pig behavior, you find out it's very close to human behavior. And when we start talking about the psychology of collapse, that's when you see how close we are to pigs in terms of how we react when things are taken away from us, right? How much time is that on there right now? That's 6 minutes and 44 seconds. Okay. So that's all down right there, right? Pretty much it's all down. And then I'll try and rub that off like that. Normally I would use like rubber gloves, and the rubber gloves are really good at taking off the down. But this stuff, I'll just grab a torch and burn it. And it'll burn right, it'll just singe right off. Won't be anything left, it'll just be bare skin, duck skin like that, right? That is a good looking, look at the breast on that thing. That's a nice duck right there. That's a good mallard. They're young up here in Alaska because they're breeding up here, getting ready to, right now they're getting ready to head south. So, let's see. Okay. So I think I'll start at the 10-minute cycle. Yeah, and I can tell by this joint right here that that's one of the shots, pieces of shot hit it right there. So that's a broken wing right there. That's when it went down. That's an actual fatal shot right. That's where the bird shot. I was using black cloud. I'm pretty impressed with black cloud. Black cloud has always dropped birds real quick. And I don't have too many cripples on them. Okay. So I'll cut the wing right about there. Then I will cut this one off of here. Right there at that joint right there. That's hilarious. So, got this other duck, but I'm going to save that for my Facebook and Instagram audience. So we'll do that then. Okay. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the psychology of collapse. let's talk about the psychology of collapse. So what you're seeing right now in the news is very important to be aware of, is that people are beginning to lose their minds. And the reason they're losing their minds is because society is falling apart. Law enforcement is being downsized. Cops don't want to work because the conditions are ridiculous. You bust somebody and you're the one who gets turned into the criminal automatically. So how can you have reliability and have people willing to put their lives on the line if they think they're going to be arrested or charge themselves for any violence that they use in order to either protect you or protect themselves? So you begin to have the lack of trust. So we talked previously in the previous episode about trust. It's about trust and how, like, even we have trust in economies. For instance, the dollar. When people lose their confidence in the dollar, i.e., as we're seeing with the inflation that's occurring in the United States especially, but around the world, resulting from the United States and other countries like the UK just printing extra money. When you print money, you're flushing it into the quality of the dollar or the currency that's in that country. The more you do that, the more you get yourself into a situation where people don't trust the currency that they're going to be trading in. And if they're trading or trying to trade in that currency, they end up where you start moving away from trust in the fiat currency, going towards what will become what used to be in terms of trade was, because we were talking about like gold and silver. Everybody's talking about gold and silver. But it'll get to a point that you go past gold and silver and you end up at goods and services. Remember that old saying, goods and services? So we have goods and services. Oh, hush that. Hey, hush that. You got goods and services, and if you got goods and services, that's what people will be trading in instead of gold and silver. Because remember, gold and silver is actually a value representation of the amount of labor that's being done by a person. And you're trading that, whether it's the labor that goes into building a watch, or it's the labor into splitting wood, or it's the labor that is involved in building a house. All these things. And we've been getting away with being able to carry coin and paper, where we'll get into a point where we say, I will trade one service for either your goods or your services, and vice versa. For instance, if I have firewood, I will trade how many cords of firewood for, let's say, 6 hours of labor, on the property. That's what we'll get into further, and the economies will shrink. So we've had these international economies that are occurring. So how does that affect this change? How does this affect the psychology of the masses? Well, when you have one system that's actually been basically spoiled, I mean, think about it. It's basically spoiled by the fact that we've got so much for just the idea of trust, of what the bankers have been trying to have created, which is an illusion of trust of paper. And if you even go further, there's the illusion of trust of gold and silver, but at least gold and silver is actually determined, the value of the gold and silver is determined by the market, right? As compared to fiat currency, paper money, representational currency that is actually been determined by the bankers when they've had their annual meetings, their international bankers. So they're the ones who determine the value of one currency and then the other currency relative to that currency, right? Like the yen against the dollar, and or the yuan against the dollar, or the pound against the dollar, or the euro against the dollar, etc. So you've got this shift, and when people realize that the reality is shifting, they go into a state of fear. For some, it can just be a shock. But for others, it can be major fear. And when you go into major fear, you then go into major anger. And when you get into anger, And if you have uncontrollable anger, then you have reactions like, for instance, up here in Alaska, people trying to steal planes. People are going and actually trying to steal planes. Now, for those of us who know history, planes have been stolen because somebody got drunk and thought they could go and steal a plane and just fly it out. There are people who can think that and have tried to do that. So that's how we know that may have happened. But it could be the other one, which is people think, well, everything's collapsing, so who's going to care if I go and steal a plane? Who's going to care if I go and steal a car? So that's what you're having in the cities. You're going to have an increase in the psychology of collapse, which is people basically it's a chaotic psychology. It's chaos. It's based on the idea that anything goes. There's no repercussions. There's not going to be law enforcement in their minds. And you're going to get the response of people, which is you'll have two sides of it. You'll have the one action, which is the criminal activity. Then it'll get to the point where people, the citizens, will get fed up of being victimized by criminals. And then they will begin to participate in vigilante responses, just like it happened in San Francisco in the 1800s. I mean, you had lynch mobs going in and just grabbing people for criminal activity that maybe before they would have been thrown in jail for. They just said, to hell with this. We're just going to hang you. And you'll have people just automatically shooting anybody coming into their house. And especially even in states where we don't have, for instance, Alaska. People think that in Alaska we have castle laws like in Texas. We don't, which I find bizarre, especially out here, because law enforcement, it takes on average 45 minutes for law enforcement to get to anybody who lives rurally like we do out here. So we're the immediate responders. We're the first responders, whether it's related to medical or security. So as you're going to be responding from a defensive mode against this psychology of chaos, psychology of collapse, you're going to have to be prepared for it. Does that mean martial arts? Does that mean Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Actually, it's going to be more along the lines of whether you can carry a firearm and be able to shoot for yourself, because when you have this kind of activity, 9 times out of 10, what happens is it's an activity that will just be explosive. It'll be a situation where you're walking down the street and you think everything's okay, and you're coming around a corner and suddenly there's a mob. And when I say a mob could be anywhere from 5 to 10 people, 20 people. And all they're doing is just looting. And they're going from store to store. And then they see you by yourself. And this is just like any kind of predator will see you and see what they can get out of you. That could be rape. That could be assault. That could be theft. That could be basically robbery. What can they get out of you? What can they take from you? And they want to, and it's like if you were to run away from a dog. If you ran away from a dog, or a bear, that's why you're taught not to run away from a bear or a dog, and to face them on. With a bear, you're supposed to, quietly walk away or back away, facing the bear. With a dog, it's the same thing. But with dogs, I've always responded with growling at them and lunging at them to get them to move off. And 9 times out of 10, that's what works. And if it's not, then that's a dog that has to be taken out, because that is a dog that will chew you to pieces. So you were getting in the situation of the psychology of collapse, and be very, very aware of what that psychology of collapse is. I mean, we're watching everything fall apart. We're getting ready to, our DC is trying to push us into a nuclear war. At the same time, the laws and the actions or the inactions that are occurring coming out of DC from the feds is just launching into everybody's safety. And the safety it's pushing onto you as a person, as a citizen, the responsibility of determining your own safety, of ensuring your own safety, whether that's through defense, whether that's through running for your life if you can, and recognizing when to get out of the way, i.e. run away, or to face the threat on head on, right? And that's based on what type of armament do you have? Do you have a gun? Do you have a shotgun? Do you have a pistol? Do you have a rifle? Do you have an AR-15? Do you have an AK-47? What is your response? You know, what's the difference between the response to someone who's a single person who's attacking you or a mob that's attacking you? If you got an AK-47, you have a pretty good chance. If you've got a shotgun, it's called a street sweeper for a reason. Shotgun is actually a better weapon, I think, for an immediate response like that, which is you're just trying to get out of there. You're not trying to have a continued battle. Remember, the whole idea, this is on taking the element on. The idea is to get yourself and your loved ones out of the way of danger. And that's what's the most important thing to do, right? Is get yourself and your loved ones out of danger as quickly as possible. Does that mean just firing immediately when they start charging at you, just so you're just firing and picking off a target? Drop one specifically that'll make the other ones think as you at the same time turn and evade. So these are things to be thinking about. Thinking about the idea that your neighborhood that used to be so protected and so safe, well, do you trust your security? What kind of security do you have? Do you live on an estate? Or basically is your security like a Ring camera and a bunch of video cameras set up to give you an early warning system so that you can respond? Do you have a dog? What kind of dog do you have? Do you have a dog that's intended for a defense guard dog, or is your dog basically just another alarm system? Personally, I prefer an alarm system dog because I don't want them to worry about the dog. I want them to worry about me. You know, that's like that old little sign that people would put on their property says, you know, forget the dog, beware of the owner. So we're getting in this situation where the psychology is just expanding, and that's the thing. It's like it starts off. It's like the old saying about Hemingway. Hemingway asked a person who went through the Great Depression. He says, "So what happened? How did it happen?" The guy was in Wall Street. And he says, basically, it was slow and then immediate. It slowly worked its way, and then it was like falling off a cliff. First slowly, and then immediately, then quickly. And how the crash of during the Great Depression. And that's how things happen sometimes, a lot of times, when you're in a tight situation. It starts off and you think everything's okay, and then suddenly it just deteriorates rapidly. The question is how fast you respond, and you're aware of it in time. You know, it could be a situation where you get attacked. A situation where suddenly you find yourself circled or surrounded. Why are you in this situation? So we're getting more and more into the environment. The world is changing, where people are looking more and more to protecting themselves or getting whatever they can while everything collapses. That looting, it's like a global form of looting when you have the psychology pick up like wildfire. So first off, it's like a little ember. It's a little spot here, Detroit, Chicago. And then suddenly you realize that you're surrounded by this wildfire and you're in the forest and you're trying to decide what can you do. If you had planned, you have a fire blanket to hopefully cover yourself, and after you dig a hole, and hopefully the fire will burn over you. But most people aren't prepared like that. So the question is, how are you going to respond? What are you thinking about now? Because it's happening. It's already happening. Nothing's going to stop this. I've been saying this repeatedly. Nothing is going to stop this. So, see? All I'm going to do is just singe that up. And then it's nice roast duck. Or probably what I'll do is cut it in half. And then you can fry or grill. Gets the skin all crispy and everything. And then you can make like a cherry duck. That's pretty good. So, think about the psychology of collapse and how you can respond to the psychology of collapse. And it's also your response. Remember, you're part of it too. For you, if you're a good person, it's the idea of shock for a lot of people. Saying, oh, wow, you know. stuff that Quirk and all these other people have been talking about is real. It's happening. And now what am I going to do to catch up? Because perhaps maybe you didn't listen to my initial warnings when I said, get ready, it's coming. And it's not only coming, it's already here now. That's why I said I moved to where I moved in 2012, because in 2007, I came back from a teaching contract in Korea, and we had the collapse in 2008, 2009, but we also had that spike in fuel prices, and that spike in fuel prices is what led to what we're having now. Spike in fuel prices. Same thing, it's happening all over again. So you got to ask yourself, is this all planned? Is everything about this occurring as they've been talking about, and people think, oh, that's just conspiracy theory? No. It's all real. Cool. See, there's that. So I'll take that off and tie it just like a fly on a baby pin, safety pin. But all I gotta do here is cut the wings off, take the tail, and cut the feet off, and I've got roast duck, and singe it, and then I've got roast duck ready to go. So I'm finishing up my talk. The next one we'll be talking about is goods and services. How can you prepare your goods and services to be able to go further and do better than everybody else who's trying to use cash like they tried to use Deutschmarks in 1923 in Germany, where they had to a wheelbarrow. The old joke was, yeah, this woman, this Frau, filled up a wheelbarrow with Deutschmarks and went to go and buy some bread. And when she came out to give the baker this wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks, the Deutschmarks were still there, but somebody had stolen the wheelbarrow. Think about that. And remember to like and subscribe so you can get my information on goods and services that hopefully will help you deal with what's happening and what will be coming. See you on the flip side.